Well, here we are on episode, what are we, on 3 for our podcast. We have Long Range Gear with us.
Hey there.
Andrew and Wyatt. What are we talking about today? Let's keep it somewhat NV4500 oriented.
All right. Sounds good.
So tell us, I guess, a little bit about what you guys have been up to.
Well, just
Port Andrew.
spending all day and night in the shop, that sort of thing. It's nice and busy. It's like 100 degrees over here, so taking long breaks in the middle of the day seems to be the normal.
Yeah.
We got a couple 5600s.
Barely breaks 75.
Yeah, inside.
Montana just seeming better and better,
Yeah. It's 100 outside right now, but.
Oh, okay. There you go.
It'll be 140 degrees colder in 6 months.
3 months.
Yeah, about that.
There you go. Yeah, we got a couple transmissions that we're trying to knock out real quick here, and Wyatt's bringing over a truckload, and we're gonna have ourselves a good coming week.
Good.
Yeah. Let's see. 4500s though lately. It seems like the last month we cannot keep those dang things on the shelf, man. We've been just going through them,
No surprise there.
No,
Yeah.
It's about the same here. NV4500 parts, can't get enough of them.
Yeah, I'll bet.
We'll get 50 gears in that we can use for the fifth gear fix, and they'll be gone.
Yeah.
Half of them are gone by the time they get here, and the other half disappear in a week or two.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty similar. I normally try to keep a handful, just because we replace them all, just making sure from the get-go.
Right.
I think we're down to 4.
That's good.
It goes away fast, but busy is about the best kind of problem you can have.
Yep. We seem to be selling a lot of bell housings too. I think we're down to our very last one of them. Like, they just fly off the shelf, but guys don't want to pay that. What is it? Advanced adapters or whatever that sells that repop one is real expensive. So we're down to our last one, and I had to send it out to get fixed up in the machine shop. But
What do you think that is? You think most of them are stripping out the pivot ball threads, or?
no, actually, what seems the last couple we've gotten in, the actual why it's smiling, the transmission bolts that go to the bell housing. I think guys are either not torquing them properly, not using some sort of Loctite, but they're coming loose and rattling around. Like it's very important to use proper torque specs. Obviously, use Loctite. I mean, some people seem to be pretty averse to using some sort of locking compound. But yeah, the one I dropped off, like it was like a junk one. Like we didn't think we were ever going to get to it, right? But we sold them all out, and one guy said, "Yeah, if you can get it repaired, we'll buy it." And so, all right, we're getting down to the.
That's good.
For the record,
So make sure you use proper torque specs and follow that manual that Chris is showing you there.
33 foot-pounds.
There you go. And
That's not a whole lot, but 33.
Yeah, and make sure use a locking comp. It doesn't have to be any. You don't got to put red or nothing in there, but put a dab of blue on there. It'll save you from ruining a very expensive bell housing.
I'm going to correct myself. That was 33 for the bell housing, the flywheel. 4,500 the bell housing is 80 foot-pounds, so it's a bit more, but still, it's not. That's not even as tight as you want to crank down on a Honda lug nut.
Yeah, and
the main case to bell housing, I've got a 4,500 here that guy lost fifth gear, and otherwise transmission's in great shape, but those bell housing bolts, getting them off, they were on so tight, and it's threaded into aluminum. So anytime, like for us, getting the pivot balls out, like putting some heat to it, get the aluminum warmed up, expands faster than the steel, so you can actually get it out. I think some people, are trying with 5600s, 4500s, what have you, to get the pivot balls out, and they're usually Loctited in. and then end up stripping and destroying their bell housings too. But
Or
as far
breaking
as
them off.
or breaking them off, even worse. But yeah, any of the stuff getting tightened into aluminum is always kind of a very careful procedure that a lot of people don't seem to be that careful with. So yes, definitely getting the book from you guys or the factory service manual, something so that, you know, the torque specs are being followed. Like everything's pretty critical to tighten it to spec, especially with the diesels. They just rattle like crazy, and you know everything's gonna walk out if it's not torqued down. So
yeah. If I could jump in there real quick, Wyatt.
Yeah.
I was just like super emphasizing a locking compound, and Wyatt brought up a good point. The pivot balls, if you put a locking compound on that, you'll probably break it taken out, at least on a 5600. That seems to be pretty common, but I've been using like a little anti-seize or something because the steel bolt going into aluminum, if you need to take that off, like if you're putting in a dual disc or whatever, they tell you to remove the washer. You got to be able to take that thing out. So don't Loctite that thing in. You know, the forces upon it are pushing it back into the bell housing anyway. So don't put Loctite on that. You'll have a bad day. So,
So let's go over, these were all the questions, right?
Those are all the questions from the social media.
Okay,
And,
we've got some questions from social media. First one, why does the input gear keep wiping out the NV4500?
Yeah, we saw-
a good one on that.
what's that?
I got a great story on that one. What happened with mine? I got this pickup for $2,000 and I just drove it. And when the transmission finally gave up, all I had left was fourth gear, and I wasn't driving it. My son was, but all he had was direct. And for the guys that don't know what's going on there, what's happening is you've got your fourth gear clutch on the front of the main shaft that the input gear slips into, and when you lock up that fourth gear clutch and synchro, you're straight through main shaft to the output shaft. So that's why that was the only thing that I had left. What happened was my input bearing retainer, the bolts were loose. When I got it out, I threaded them out by hand. There was nothing to it. And with that being loose, that gear started to walk different than the countershaft gear, and eventually both of the gears just wiped out completely. It looked like they got heated up to around, I don't know, 10 million Jesus degrees, flattened out over the side. I can show you a picture. We'll see if we can stick that up here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was absolute carnage.
Yeah,
just from not having the proper alignment.
Yeah, and it's an important thing to mention that if you only have fourth, like if that's your simp that you just described, your counter shaft is not spinning, right? Which means you're not getting any oil to the top shafts that are the ones that are carrying load and spinning. So if you've wiped your input, your counter shaft that's supposed to be slinging oil is just sitting there. Please stop driving.
Absolutely. Excellent point there, because you're right. What people don't understand about that all the time is there's no pump in that transmission.
Yeah.
But each of the main gears on the main shaft have a series of holes in them. I think they all have 3 holes in them. First, second, third, and reverse all have holes in them.
That was the one on the bottom. Yours is on the table, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go grab that.
Table. Okay.
You keep going.
So those holes, as the countershaft gear rolls up onto that hole and moves with that gear, it pushes that tiny little bit of oil through that hole into the main bearing. Just what you're talking about. Without that bottom spinning, it's not going to do that.
Yeah. I think a huge source of problems for not specifically the 4500, but for any gearbox has this general design, setting your end play is critical, and depending on what kits you use or what bearings or how it's been treated, your end play when it was set, it could start off correctly. That doesn't necessarily mean it stays correct after wear and abuse. Oh, look at that. So it's important to, if you've got it out, you always need to check it, because I think a huge contributor. I have a few gears here to try to illustrate my point. It's not going to work very well, but and these are not NV4500 gears either, but instead of having nice, correct, straight alignment here with teeth engagement, if your end play's off, it can kind of start to do this, where you only have a portion of your gear engaging and driving all the force in your gearbox, right? And that's how you start breaking teeth. And if you just keep driving it, keep sending it, keep giving it the beans, you're going to wipe everything. So make sure that you've got it
I
out.
have my input gear with me, but just this counter shaft, you can see. I don't know if we'll try and get a better close up here in a second, but you can see if you look close that the gears just wiped around all the way around.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point. It gets kind of back to the Loctite side. We had a customer transmission come in where whoever previously had built it didn't use any sort of Loctite or Permatex, whatever you want to use on anything. So the input retainer, 3 of the 4 bolts completely came out. It destroyed the input, destroyed the counter shaft. Trying to think of what else that saw, but also the extension housing on the rear, no Loctite on anything. Also was,
I think the rear bearing retainer came off on that one too, didn't it? For the counter shaft, didn't that come loose?
Wow.
Yes. So the retainer plates on the rear, those should get Loctite as well, which brings up a good point looking at the questions list. So there's a question about where to check end play on the main and counter shaft. So with the counter shaft in fully assembled with your shims and that retainer plate, same thing with the main shaft. Have that all together and then have the transmission sitting vertical somehow so that your input's facing downward. All the weight of the gear train is going to force it down, and then use dial indicator with a magnetic base is what we usually use to the main case itself and get it set up so you want to be as perfectly vertical with those shafts, and then take a pry bar or something. Be careful, obviously, and you want to pry on the main shaft. As you check that, you'll get a reading out of it. Same thing with the counter shaft, and then you can pull it apart, change shims as need be, but you can't do it with the you got to do it before you put the extension housing back on it, otherwise you can't check your counter shaft play. So really before you assemble the entire 5th gear system, check your end play.
Good call on that. And I had something I forgot. I'll get back to it in a second. But
I've got another one. I don't have any broken gears here, but a common one, going back to the misalignment, we've been talking about making sure the shafts themselves don't misalign. With the 5th gears, it's common for them to back off. We had a fix for it years ago, had it patented, and it was all based off OE parts. So that's why we don't offer that anymore, but it kind of fixed that. Now, a lot of the fixes you see are the splined collar that engages the nut, so it can't physically back off. The thing we've seen with that, it doesn't address the root cause, which is the gear gets loose on the shaft and then the nut's not tight and it backs off. What that does is it holds the nut on, but the gear still wears out between the inside of the gear and the outside of the shaft. So that starts to walk back and forth, and then you get deflection there. Even though your end plays could be good, you still have gear deflection, and then you break your counter shaft and main shaft 5th gear teeth off. I don't know how much you've seen of that, but we've heard from a few guys that it does keep the gear from backing off, but
the
new commercially gear or losing both.
The new commercially available like 5th gears and the full spline main shafts, they're not a tight fit at all.
No, they're not.
No, they just slip right on.
Yeah, you can use something to try to limit movement, like some sort of a retaining, like a green, what is it, the Loctite 620 if you want.
Loctite sleeve retainer. Yep.
Yeah. no telling like long term what that looks like. I'm sure after 100,000 miles, it's all crushed up and out of there. But
Probably, yeah. Something, I don't know, you might, well, I guess you just did your rebuild, so you can't try it, but just taking a chisel or something and going perpendicular to the splines and then pressing the gear on, maybe, eventually it'll still kind of wear back in, but at least it would be a press fit gear for a while.
yeah, you mean like putting a ding or something on the splines?
Yeah, putting dings all over your splines so the gear does press on. Officially I can't recommend that, but it would be interesting to see, somebody that drove a truck a lot. What's it look like 100,000 miles? Does it still want to press or, pull off, or does it slip off?
That might be one to try on that Chevy one that I'm going to put together.
Yeah. Gonna have to start driving that one to work.
I'd be happy to. I got an old 89 one-ton Chevy that I'm going to put a Cummins in and use the Dodge front half and the Chevy back half.
Yep.
So it'll
There you
start
go.
wearing on that Chevy back main shaft.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be an interesting experiment. We got some parts. Maybe we'll give it a try and then send Wyatt's truck's still a 5-speed. We can just have him drive back and forth to Montana picking up parts.
There you go. That'll work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Company's paying for fuel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, half the company's paying for fuel.
Yeah. Half the company is.
Yeah. No, I think so far, I've used those slip collars that you were talking about, and I gotta say the actual little I have one in the shop. I should have brought it in, but the actual pieces that engage those little tabs that engage right here, they're really thin, really thin. They're not like very stout. I'm really nervous about. I would be hesitant to put one in a customer transmission. But between like when you buy a new full spline main shaft, you get these little half moons that fit right here. This with the concave washer and 5th gear with the little set screws, and 11 billion gallons of red Loctite. It's having a good track record. So,
Yeah, that's a good point. The current one that I've got here is the rebuild on it. It is a full spline main shaft. It had the 5th gear nut fix, I suppose, half done. It had the 2-piece washer, that thrust washer. It did not have the conical washer, and then the set screws weren't engaging. I don't know if they just backed out themselves. They didn't use Loctite or what have you. But then the nut itself was not Loctited of any way, shape, or form. And I think that's probably a lot of what it is keeping the nut to still have some level of tension on it. I think there's too much play probably in those spline retaining sleeves with those fingers on them, that if fifth is able to rock it and back it off just enough, I mean, it can really, throw that gear pattern out of alignment and then just destroy it, which seems to be kind of the case. Is it held the nut in place, but then the question is, was there actually any pressure still on the nut, or had it just kind of wallered it out to the point where it could come off? So that's part of why every build that we do, we just do a new full spline main shaft, new 5th gear, and then make sure to use ample amounts of red Loctite on everything to hold it together and in place. And that brings up
new nuts too.
New nuts as well. We basically, besides the countershaft 5th gear, unless there's something wrong with it, we totally redo the 5th gear main shaft. There's a question for 5th gear nut torque. The Dodge service manual says 250 to 350 foot-pounds, so do with that as you will.
Had a customer in here today was asking. We've got a tool that fits the backside of the main shaft. It's just a socket that splines right up to it, and then obviously we've got the spanner wrench to get that nut. And when I did one here last week with my son helping me out. We call him Yeti. He's about this much taller than me. He's a big boy. I said, all you need is an extra large mammal to help you get that thing tightened up. I said, you put the pry bar on the main shaft. I said, you can lock in the two gears and it'll stop it from moving, but
Mhm.
it's really no substitute for holding the whole transmission still with that bar holding there. Holding that, I had him bounce on that with a bar, and we got up to about 320 foot-pounds on there.
Yeah. What we do, I mean, oftentimes it's like super late. I'm out in the shop working on stuff, so I don't really have any help like in those late nights, right? So I'll lock two gears together, and then I'll slide the transmission to the edge of my bench. And my actual workbench is a big giant wood table thing that I built that's fixed to the wall. And I have just like a metal piece of strapping. It'll go from one of the upper bolt holes on the case, and then I'll screw it into the side of my wood table. So
Right.
if you got the angles right, I can like support myself at the end of a bar and it won't move. And yeah, 320 or more, maybe.
At least.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think you could at the point where you were destroying stuff. Tightening one of these down, I think is would be far more than you'd be able to reach with a breaker bar. So get it
I saw
real
some
tight.
guys go after it with a big truck wrench, like the big torque wrench you use for big diesel
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I saw them go after it with that and a cheater bar, and then once they had it on, they tack welded it in place. After they peened it into the relief there in
Yeah.
the groove, and then they put a tack on that side as well. And I think I'm with you right up until you put the welder on there.
Yeah, that's this little part right here. Doing a good stake on both sides in these little spots here. Doing a good stake is also really beneficial. Some guys just kind of like, put a ding in there and it slightly bends, and they're like, "Cool, it's staked." Give it a
Yeah.
good stake.
No, that's not enough.
It needs to form all the way
Yes.
down in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
What we've seen a lot of guys do, well, we've had both. Some guys weld the nut to the shaft, and of course they're calling for another shaft right away, because it heat shocks
Yeah.
the shaft just enough. Welding the nut to the gear, to some success anyway. Most of those guys we haven't heard back, if it worked or not. So I assume it worked.
Yeah.
And I just hate to be the guy that did the next rebuild.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, if it was my old transmission and it didn't need a rebuild, I would definitely consider that, just welding it. It's obviously not something we would ever do for a customer, but
Right.
I mean, it's kind of hard to beat that for a fix, right? I mean, this is not going to move, but you've effectively ruined your transmission, and you cannot service it after that without taking some cutting tools to it. You're going to have to remove it completely to replace your main shaft. So if it's like a work truck and you're desperate and that's the only thing wrong with it, sure, a guy could do that at home, but then you're that transmission is
then
now
it's
like,
fixed.
Stuck.
Yeah.
Then it's a big
It's,
good.
yeah.
yeah, you start having
Yeah.
synchro issues, or you get a bearing noise or something like that. Unless it's just an isolated input problem, you're now screwed. You're sending it out, so it's just something to consider, right?
The main shaft that I put in a year ago when I built that transmission the first time. And just to be clear, I'm not an expert. I'm learning a lot. I'm getting closer all the time. But that first one I stuck in there was an eBay part that I had before I knew that TorqueKing existed. And it's a full spline shaft, and it was a decent fifth gear, I'm sure. But when I put it in, I had it tightened up to 305, 306 foot-pounds. I even bought a wrench that would read that. Got it all put in, drove it for a year, and when I went and pulled it out here a couple of weeks ago, swapped it out, finally got a chance to look into it, and the fifth gear nut was completely backed off. I unthreaded by hand. I had it 100% spotless clean of oil when I put the Loctite on and had it all tight, and it still backed off. And that one was a super loose slip fit for the gear and the bearing both, which was great to put it back and forth and while I was figuring out how to build that transmission. But now I look at it, I put a new TorqueKing shaft that we've got here in, and it's a tighter fit by a lot. It's a better deal altogether, and it was a lot easier to get it put together and on tight.
How many miles did you have on that eBay kit?
Oh, probably 20,000, which is a lot for a year, but not for me.
Yeah. If we're talking about cheap eBay stuff, there's definitely something I want to chime in with. The small parts kits that you'll get off eBay drive me nuts. I've been hit in the face with these giant snap ring on the shaft. If you go to put them back, if you're using just a cheap one, you go to use your nice big giant snap ring pliers. I've had to break and like spring back and hit me in the face and hit the wall. Using like really good stuff makes a difference. So like you're gonna save
Absolutely.
both aggravate, and these aren't like available at your local hardware store, right? I mean they're pretty massive, but if you use a cheap one, they're like, you can see they're kind of like pot metal pieces of crap. If you break one and you don't have spares, like your build is on hold for however long it takes for you to get a hold of somebody. If you're on the weekend, you're done. So TorqueKing stuff, I haven't had one of these break installing, which the cheap ones, you might have that happen and it sucks, especially if you get hit in the face. It's not cool. There's a lot of tension.
We're
Yeah.
safety
You want
goggles.
to talk about frustration?
Absolutely. But I've got plenty of good stuff on eBay, but not everything is the same quality. There's plenty of outfits on eBay that are suppliers that have good stuff that's there, and some of those even will have their top of the line product and another import product. I understand the reasoning for that. We've got some products that are an import product because people were complaining about how much it costs for the good part. So we've got a couple of parts that are like that that we offer, and we got the best ones we can find. But versus an American-made part or the premium part, it's almost always a smart answer to go for the better part. I'm proving it over and over with this transmission in my dang pickup. If you can't afford to fix it right the first time, when can you afford to fix it right?
Yeah. Well, if you can't afford to fix it right the first time, you probably can't afford to fix it twice. So let's take the cheaper route.
Buy once, try once.
Yeah, I called Joel and I have him, go back and see if you guys got like your NV5600 stuff. When I was at your guys' warehouse, I was like a kid in a candy store. You had all the good vendors and all the good markings, and so I'll text Joel or call Joel and be like, hey man, can you go check and see if you got the 5th gear counter shafts? He's like, sure, yep, we got them. And I'll order them up. Because some of the stuff you get on eBay, and I'm not dogging other suppliers or anything like that, but right. If you go to TransStar, which is kind of like the go-to place, that they sell pretty much everything that's stamped AT, with a few exceptions. Some of the gears you can get away with stuff like that. Actually, I take that back. A lot of the gears you can get away with that, but when you start talking about like NV5600 6 gears, 6 gear counter shaft, things that like are really important that people go through a lot, the AT doesn't cut it. The AT stamped 6 gear in a 5600 is like guaranteed to fail. Or you guys carry the good C21, E21, those stampings. The 5th gear and 6th gear. I know I'm getting off the topic of 5 speeds, but the point stands. TorqueKing might be a little bit more than eBay, sure, but I don't see comebacks, right? I mean, like,
very rarely.
I've got a whole stack of AT stamped broken 6 gears, whereas we hunt down the C21, E21, or the Circle K, those kinds of things that have a little bit better markings on them, and those hold up great. And when you start breaking stuff inside, a cheap gear can shear some teeth, send it, and you might just break that gear. You might break 4 other ones. So
that's a very good point. If you break one gear, you're not going to just break that one gear.
Yeah.
Because the teeth that come out of there might get into who knows what other gears, and you can end up taking out thousands of dollars in nothing flat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's good to buy the opposing gear, whatever, depending on what your level of carnage is. Getting a match set from a good source is probably not a bad idea, just to avoid any fatiguing issues or anything like that. Wyatt could probably speak to that a little bit better. He's the physicist here. But buying cheap stuff is never it never saves you money. It either screws you or you take a loss when you go to offload it as a broken thing. So just another 50, 60, maybe $100 for something real expensive, but you won't have to talk to me again after I replace your transmission parts.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And that's the unfortunate thing with eBay. You never know who is who, really. You just see pictures and prices, and
I think a lot of those places seem to drop ship straight from Zumbrota, but like the cheaper it gets, like I don't know. I've never dealt with Zumbrota or whoever straight up, before I ended up going through somebody, but I don't know if they sell like different lot number pricing. Like if there's we had a cryo batch come out of the foundry, here, we'll sell them for half price. I'm pretty sure that's what happens, because I get, premium stuff, like beautiful cast iron tail housings from TorqueKing. But if you get something like eBay Joe Schmo or whatever, they've come in with like casting slag all over, or it looks like they went and like reshaped something with a grinder before spraying it with their coating and sending it out. It's not pretty, and I can only think that there's a different scale. And I'm speculating, I don't know, but I can only assume that
there probably is. There's a I won't name them, but there is a popular company out there that most people have heard of, and they've got a couple different brands of products. And it's all the same product, but whatever meets the top criteria, it's labeled as that brand, and the other stuff is labeled, not half as much, but it's quite a bit cheaper, labeled as a different brand, but it's the same stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me if other companies are doing the same thing. They sell their premium stuff, and then everything else is, they sell it to whoever can buy it and resell it on eBay or wherever they want to sell it at.
You get that tighter tolerance stuff, you have a lot less chance of hitting that tolerance lasagna where everything is just far enough out of spec.
Mm-hmm.
That you've meshed up and made the perfect storm of destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess one thing I'll say is that I really like my favorite part, at least in all the kits I've got from you guys. I got a few examples here. We get Timken labeled stuff for the most part. I don't know if you guys carry any Koyo stuff, but all the like TransStar kits or whatever, the cheap eBay stuff will come with Koyo. Koyo's fine and everything, but I've torn apart transmissions with a ton of miles on them with the Timken stuff, and the bearings seem to just stay in great shape. Koyo, I mean, they're okay. I mean, they're good. They're fine, but there's a like when I take a Timken out with 300,000 miles plus on it, and it's still usable. That's a huge testament to me, especially since how abused these transmissions get. Like, guys will completely ignore things like hauling hay for 20 years or something like that. And these Timkens, I love Timken bearings, man. They just hold up. The Koyos, I've torn them apart after 20,000, and they seem like they have maybe a little bit more wear than those 300,000 mile Timkens. But granted, these will run for a very long time. But the kits I've gotten from TorqueKing with the Timken, I get all like giddy, like, we got good bearings.
That's right. What we sell is the best stuff. during the virus, sometimes Timken wasn't keeping up with demand.
Oh yeah.
There was some Koyos and some Nachi Japans or Nachi USAs.
Yeah. NTN.
We always contacted the customer and asked if they were okay with that. But, only in rare cases like that will it not be a Timken because, well, like you said, you get a heck of a lot more life out of them. They look better.
Yeah.
We don't want to have to hear about the bad stuff. So,
Yeah. Like, I
we're
don't.
probably in the same boat. That's why you're using the good stuff.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see, but this, like the rollers on this bearing, I don't know how well that's coming across, but this is like a 215,000 mile bearing. It's a Timken. It's
Really?
This. I mean, it was a well taken care of transmission. I didn't have to hardly replace much in it out of a 5600. But they come out looking this good. Like I love Timkens.
Just broke in is what it looked like.
Yeah, it was
Finally set.
ready to get sent back. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, you're not wrong about people abusing these trucks though with the 4500 or the 5600. I'm not the worst. I think I'm gonna hope that I'm not the worst, but I've definitely hauled I got a 26,000 pound GVW gooseneck that has been loaded less than that several times, but almost always right at it or more. And the highest load I ever hauled in that thing was 34,134 pounds. It was a heavy load.
yeah.
Transmission definitely took some beating out of that, but that's I don't do that every day. I only did that one time, and I never put another row on top of the hay. But it was a whole lot better after that. But I know I'm not the only guy that'll do that, and there's plenty of guys that'll haul that extra row because they're only going however many miles, right?
Yeah.
Well, it does take a toll on those transmissions. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
It's worth having the better bearings in for that kind of abuse.
Yeah. I live on a hay farm. There's 40 acres of hay right out there. And there's hay farms all around me out here, and I see trucks going by, tons of second gens, and I can hear them hitting the curves and shifting, and I'm just like, well, poor 4500. But
is there an ag exempt for transmission load ratings, or maybe there should be?
I do not think so, but whatever.
I'm pretty sure there is. I mean, I don't think it's written down anywhere. But
no, there's got to be there's an ag exempt for everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we have a customer that travels. We built him a 4500 and a transfer case, and he travels from Western Washington over the mountain pass and up Vantage and comes over here to my street to buy hay. And I mean, that was he sent us a transmission. That's the one we were talking about that had it all come apart from another rebuilder. I cannot imagine like how hard those gears would be screaming for help if we could hear them coming up Vantage at 26K or more. Vantage is like a hill right up the side of near Gorge or George. So we made sure to, he's going to keep doing that. And when we send him his stuff back, we made sure that we emphasized good fluid, good synthetic stuff. And then we also
change it.
Yeah, and change it. For the love of God, change
it. I think that's a good segue to both the fluid use and then like the trans coolers. Like the NV4500 5600s are both cast iron cases that don't have any sort of exterior cooling systems to them. So if they're building heat, like especially towing heavy, like the PTO coolers are a good upgrade. But then also, I think, I don't know, Andrew, with the exception of maybe a couple, virtually every transmission or core we've gotten has just been running old gear oil or one that's running, I think, motor oil. And it like turns pasty, starts clogging. The fifth gear counter shaft gear on a 4500 has a port for that needle bearing for oil to go in through the back of the counter shaft and be flung into that needle bearing. And not that I don't think we've had any that are clogged. We clean them out, but like the 6-speeds have more ports of that nature through the center of the counter shaft. And so cleaning all that out, but that's any small debris that occurs from just use, or the gear oil's breaking down and turning into sludge, gets packed in there. RTV, making sure, I don't know what, they come with caps with RTV. You don't have to use the whole tube in one shot. It's tempting.
What's the fun in that?
It's not all that expensive. You can buy another tube.
Like some of these, like popping the top covers off, and there's like a inch long drip that went down the inside of the case of RTV. And it's like, okay, that's wildly too much. That's going to get into something, and it's not going to play nice. And that's not good. But then getting the right fluids, and like looking at our list of things. Someone had mentioned GL4 and why it has to be GL4. It doesn't necessarily have to be GL4. It could be GL5 fluid. We only recommend the Redline MT85. It's a really good synthetic fluid. That is a GL4. There's, for this individual, you can do some research for like yellow metal friendliness tests that have been done. I think it was an ASTM test I've got pulled up on my other laptop here, but just for instance, ASTM D130, it's a copper corrosivity test for gear oils to determine yellow metal friendliness, which the 4500s don't have the brass synchros to worry about, but there are a lot of oils that are GL5 rated that don't cause damage to the yellow metals. The GL4s that they had in this one test I was looking at scored generally higher, but it's not all inclusive. It's probably 20 different brands that are available. The GL ratings aren't specific to manual transmissions. They're for all gear oils, so axle stuff. You don't want to run something with a friction modifier in the transmission. Redline, the MT85 is what we go with. I know you guys at TorqueKing have that for the 5 speeds.
That was the only oil that we, when you couldn't get the Castrol Synchro Mesh anymore, the MT85 was the only oil I could find that was very close to all the same specs, and I couldn't find a single bad review with the NV4500 using that oil. I haven't checked in a few years. There might be one or two. Oh, there you go. There might be one or two now. I don't know, but even AMSOIL, and they're what they rated at is 7590, I believe, instead of a 7585. So
yeah,
a little different viscosity, and their additive packages are always. I've read 50/50 on the AMSOIL, and that's why we went with the Redline product, because I just couldn't find negative on it. And
Good stuff.
Usually when you see a ton of reviews and you don't see any negative,
it's a pretty good indicator.
You just go with that.
And a good way to preserve like that. Stuff isn't cheap, and it's hard for guys to swallow when they can go to O'Reilly's or Napa or whatever and see gear oil for Master Pro gear oil for $3.49 a quart. Like, it's hard for them to say, why would I spend $20 on a quart of oil? Well, number one, like, that good Redline synthetic is going to last way longer before it starts breaking down. But number two, I mean, you can prolong its, like, your transmission can get contaminated, obviously. Number one, from, if you have the top cover, if you have a square top, the little rubber gasket around the shifter, keeping that in good shape to keep stuff from getting in. But, TorqueKing also has I have the whole kit sitting here, but these little filtration kits that fit in here with this little bypass, if you run a good fluid, it pays to have some sort of a filtration system that we can kind of retrofit. But you can make that stuff last pretty long before it's to the point where you see like an adverse shifting effect, right? I mean, you can get a lot of mileage out of a good quality synthetic. So instead of going cheap and throwing $3 gear oil in your transmission that may or may not work, and you still will have to change it soon anyway, investing in a good fluid will both keep it cooler. Wyatt can talk about some of the lubrication benefits and the gear protection for all the forces and shear stuff, because he's a doctor, and feel free to chime in here, Wyatt, while I'm rambling.
Well, no, it's a good point. And then on the flip side of that, just going to pick the most expensive fluid on the shelf is also not exactly the right choice. Seen a lot of, I haven't tried it, but seen a lot of bad reviews on the Royal Purple stuff in these manual transmissions. Those are actually on that list for yellow metal friendliness. So if you're running it in a 6-speed with the brass synchros, it will eat the brass. So before you even get a chance to destroy them yourself, your fluid will. But yeah, change the oil. When we do the builds, we recommend the first 1,000 miles be gentle on the transmission. Try not to just totally romp on it, because we do replace all the bearings, all the synchros, full rebuild, let everything kind of marry into itself. But then after that 1,000-mile break-in period, change the oil and see if there's any debris in there that could be an issue. But really, you're doing that initial break-in for your synchros, and there's probably going to be some amount of metal shavings as well, a very minor amount. If you're running all fresh gears, those gears need to remesh with each other. So once you do the rebuild, don't just run it without checking that oil. And likewise, if you have a leak, if you have a consistent leak, you need to fix it, because you're going to run it dry. And generally, those bearings don't take being run dry for very long.
That's where the weird mixtures of oil come from. When guys have a slow leak and they have to add every time they're going to do a delivery or pick something up, they just add random things, and then you have oil jelly. Like, it's like, stop doing that. God, fix your leak.
Yeah, I know I should stop doing that. It's really expensive.
Yeah,
really expensive.
His truck's actually leaking all over our shop floor as we speak.
Oh, man.
So
it's ugly.
we'll have to. Speaking of leaks, yeah, unrelated to transmission is one of his rear wheel seals. Yeah, he's.
Oh, that was yours, huh?
Yeah, that was. Oh, yeah,
that's my ugliness. Yeah, you saw that already.
We'll put that up on the background for the viewers. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I got that pickup for super cheap, and I was just going to keep it cheap and then use it as a donor. But I love driving the thing so much, I've just been driving it ever since. So if you get a super cheap donor pickup, check your brakes. Good idea. Just saying, putting that out there. Probably a good idea to take a look at everything. You don't have to look at everything the first day, but certainly within the first 3 years, you might want to put the rims off, have a good look at what's going on in there. I recommend it strongly.
Yeah. I'm gonna support that. Within 3 years, yes, check your brakes.
Maybe within 3 months. That's probably a better idea. Maybe within like one oil change, probably a better idea.
Yeah.
Every example is a good example. Some examples are a good example of what you should do, and some examples are a good example of what not to do. And I'd like to do a whole lot more good examples of what you should do, but I happen to have a little of both.
He's good for content, we could say.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Pictures, video.
We don't need anybody even to come over here. We just bring my stuff in.
Yeah. We need both examples, both ends of the spectrum. So thank you for your contribution, Chris.
I'm glad I could help. Glad I could contribute.
So I think, we've hit a lot of the items. Do you want to, Andrew, talk about the cast iron tail housings?
Yes, I am a huge, huge fan of these things. So, I have here. This is an aluminum one that we took off of a transmission, and they're really not that heavy. They're not super stout. We've had, I guess it kind of blends into the whole leak, the leak topic we were talking about. We've had customers that actually split those or crack them somehow, develops a leak, and had all kinds of problems and stuff like that. I really, 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 and when I say I really, really, I mean we only send out our units with the cast iron tail housings. I don't have any scientific data. I'm not, a rocket surgeon like Wyatt. I don't have anything to support this, but it's my opinion that cast iron tail housing really helps add a bit of structural rigidity to the whole case. But I mean, just for the simple fact that you've got a freaking transfer case hanging off it's on supported by your shaft, but man, these things are so cheap and they're so damn heavy. They're so freaking stout. As long as you get, TorqueKing has them. I think, what do you get? Your guys' website has them for like $170 or something like that. It's not
pretty close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a no-brainer for me. I put them on everything, and we haven't had anything cracked, any leaks, nothing like that. But I really think that it helps hold, that in certain parts that NV4500 case is not very thick, especially above the bearing where the bearings go. Like some parts of that are really, really thin. So I mean, I don't have the scientific data or any sort of like crazy cross references to show like how much flexion can be occurring with the case, but I can't help but think that a cast iron housing that weighs like 40 pounds or whatever it is doing quite a bit to help more than that 12-pound or whatever aluminum thing.
I think a majority of the failures we've seen with the aluminums are when guys bolt 205s on the back.
Yeah.
Would definitely be the majority.
It's a much
of course,
heavier.
if you got any driveline vibration, that's going to be another weak point. But
yeah, and these second gens that most of these are in, they ride like absolute crap, especially when you're throwing coil spacers and jacking your airbags up to clear 37s or whatever. I don't know, the dumb things people
driving
do. But
70 miles an hour down gravel roads.
Man, like it'll rattle your teeth out. Like guys complain about second gens all the time. Well, let's keep in mind you got a transfer case that's also experiencing all that, and it's supported both by your shaft through the input, but the only thing keeping it from spinning in circles is your tail housing, right? So using a good solid cast iron housing, I cannot emphasize it enough. I really think that they are beneficial. Now they've worked all the bugs out of them. Like we're seeing nothing but good things. So that's one thing that we do on everything, and I really like them.
Yeah, I've got one on mine as well. I think it was probably one of the best things I could throw on there to strengthen the whole thing up. Yeah. You can't really strengthen up the gears besides maybe getting them cryo-treated. But as far as getting some more strength for the transmission, that cast iron housing is a definite addition in my opinion.
Yeah. And it'd be one thing if it was like a $500 upgrade, like him and on and stuff. $160 is just like that decision is made for you. Like just order it, like put it on there. It's good.
Cheap insurance, that's for sure.
Cheap insurance, and then you can I don't know, have a stack of aluminum housings to do something with, make something cool out of it. I don't care.
You could melt them down and make something out of them, probably.
Yeah, for sure. Tool holders. I use it to stand stuff. Stand up a shaft while you're building something. It'll keep it up like that.
Absolutely.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what is that giant wheel hub we used for the 6?
Oh, the Kodiak 5500.
Yeah.
Front wheel hub. Yeah.
Use all kinds of stuff like that to stand things up.
Not everybody's got one of them laying around, though.
No, yeah, you're gonna have to find something else.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Before we get too far running out of time for this show, let's see what we got for other customer questions or social media questions. Did you guys have any? I've got a couple here with some stuff on the table.
Yeah, I'm looking at what, I don't know if that was you, Chris, or Joel sent out, but so I guess going down the list, we've answered quite a few of them, but yeah, the first one I see is this good for a Gen 3 Hemi, or are there better options? You know, I think the question would be if the bell housing would even bolt up to it. I know the initial Hemi trucks came with the gas G56 option, which would probably be a much easier setup, but it kind of doesn't really state if this is trying to go into a car or something custom or what have you. If you can adapt it, I'm sure it would hold up just fine for sure. I don't know what
Yeah,
other options.
the thing to consider when you're if you're deciding if you want to throw an NV4500 into something, and a lot of guys they overlook this, is check the ratios, check your axle ratios, your tire size, your intended use, your horsepower, and see if this is actually a viable option. Like if you're able to somehow shoehorn this behind a 4-cylinder, and you're pulling loads with it, right? I'm just making an example, right?
Right. Now you probably
Something with no horsepower
with the tranny.
Yeah.
Somebody with no horsepower, right? And you're trying to haul a load up a hill. Those gear splits are going to kill you. Like you're just not going to be able to do it in anything other than second gear. So you have to consider if you have the power to overcome that. And it doesn't take much, but it's something to keep in mind. If you're running 354s and 37s and you refuse to regear your axles and you flat up and you have no power, you're going to probably struggle a little bit with a 4500. But it can get it done. It's a durable transmission. The parts are affordable. It's hard to find an example aside from a made up 4-cylinder towing example that I just did. It's hard to come up with an example where a 4500 is not applicable, because they're a fantastic, super versatile, common transmission. But there might be better options.
That's a good point, though. Keep in mind because I know there's another question about someone wanting to, put it behind a mild, I think he said a mild built, is it a 12 valve or 24 valve?
There's this
mild 12 valve. That's what they came behind.
There's that, and then there's this other guy with a turbocharged 445 FE big block.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on the use, and it goes back, it's a truck transmission. So the guy with the Gen 3 Hemi, if it's going in a car, even the later model, your first gear ratio is still super, super low. Like you probably wouldn't want to put it in a car. If it's in a truck, then yeah, it's more viable. And then I guess kind of shifting with that is it can be a good transmission. A lot of guys kill transmissions regardless of what the transmission is by lifting and putting big tires and not regearing. And this is true across automatics or manuals.
Absolutely.
This tends to be the weakest link. So if you're putting it and being responsible with it, so like this guy with his 12 valve question, daily drive it, occasionally tow a camper and haul firewood. That's kind of what I use mine for.
I can't think of a better transmission to use it for that.
Yeah.
Honestly.
The 4500 in my truck currently is I bought the truck from the original owner, a little backstory, about a year and a half ago, and it was pretty much stock. And he claimed in the early 2010s that it got a rebuilt 4500, which it definitely is the late style case with the narrow reverse idler. So there's no question that it's not the original. Still rocking the round top, but haven't pulled that transmission out yet. I'm going to soon to see how everything's held up, but a couple months ago went on the dyno for 4 pulls in 5th gear, and the peak horsepower was 516 horse to the tire and 1,236 foot-pounds. And granted, shift's great. It does. That's the thing. It's like I'm not rev dumping it and being a moron and, drive it like you're not 15 and it'll be fine. And then kind of the thing, a lot of the older automatics and these manuals included, if you look at the driver's, owner's manual of whatever vehicle, it was, don't haul in overdrive. It's the same thing with these. If you're loaded, don't run fifth gear. Or do it at your own risk. Basically, same thing with the 6 speeds or any
No, I know
automatic.
I've done it, but I'd have to agree. If you really need to haul heavy, get a 210 truck. Get a Peterbilt, Kenworth, big International, something like that. If that's what you're really going to do is haul heavy,
Mm-hmm.
go the whole route. Get the biggest stuff you can get. I
Or-
mean,
or-
even a 45 or 5500 Dodge or a
Yeah, at least a medium
Pontiac
duty.
Chevy.
Anything.
Well, I mean,
get the right tool for the right job.
and one thing to add to Wyatt's point there, don't be a moron. And then, if you're going to tow, don't tow an overdrive. With that being said, we all do, right? You get on a long flat stretch, you're probably going to shift to overdrive. Let's not BS anybody here, but don't be afraid to downshift when that hill's coming up. Like, don't try to say, oh, maybe I can make it up this gigantic elevation change in fifth. Downshift, right? If you start lugging in fifth, that is where you're going to hyperdrive your fifth gear issues, right? It's going to happen before you know it. Downshift into direct to get up your hills, or to, if you're crossing to what was it, 31,000 pounds, you said, Chris? If you're up there, maybe just
31,134 pounds, I believe. 34,000.
Yeah, 30. Okay, yeah, you're 34,000. Please go in direct only.
Absolutely. I didn't. I don't
Or-
think I put it in overdrive for that load.
Yeah, and you know what? If you're to the point where 4500s may not be something, you do have alternatives before going to a giant 2-ton truck. The 6 speeds are quite a bit more expensive. They are quite a bit stronger. That is another option that I personally, I'm a fan of the 6 speeds quite a bit.
Oh yeah. For somebody that maybe hasn't seen them, if you're used to the old 435, 465 4-speed transmission that the Ford, Dodge, Jeep, everybody ran them. That's a fairly good sized transmission compared to a little Muncie 4-speed or something like that.
Yeah.
You go from that 435 to the 4500, and it looks like that's truck transmission compared to that. And then you look at the 4500 next to a 5600, and you think, why did I think that was a big transmission?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
you
we
get the G56, and you think, what do I want with a 4500? Well, what you want with a 4500 is they built it from 92 to 2007.
Mhm.
It's the longest run of a transmission, and GM and Dodge used it. And there's so many parts you can interchange between them, you can make something work to fit your application. That's the big reason to go with a 4500.
And all the parts are available. There's certain things for 6 speeds, like if you crack your bell housing on a 6-speed, well, you got to call me, and I'm going to charge you a lot of money.
A good welder.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there's no fixing it. Like, guys that throw the front shaft out because they don't service that double cardan, and they'll take out a big window on their belt, you're screwed. Whereas if those sorts of things happen with a 4500, number one, the fix will be substantially cheaper, and number two, it's readily available. So, just for example, I think I recently had to replace a case on a 4500, and I went down to Transtar down in Spokane. It's an hour drive for me. It's the closest place, but Transtar has those 4500 cases on the shelf. I don't know if TorqueKing has a stock of cases, but they're still remanufactured. Whereas for a 5600 case or a G56 case, you can find them. They still do recast those NV4500 cases, but they are super expensive. If you have to ship them, it's like $180 or whatever just to go from the bottom of the West Coast up to me. It's insane. And then obviously the rebuild cost is through the roof. So, I mean, it's a pretty smart financial choice to stick with a 5-speed if it can be made to fit your application and your usage.
Mm-hmm.
And if you break it, it's not the end of the world to totally redo it. I think they're great.
that does kind of bring us to this turbocharged 445. I don't know what kind of horsepower that's putting out, but we can state the rated power. And I believe, let's see, I believe these specs are going to be for the latest version of the 4500. Rated gross vehicle weight for the Dodge Diesel big output, 16,000 pounds.
That's just for the pickup, right? That doesn't count the trailer.
I guess it doesn't count the trailer, I guess. Yeah. The torque rating for the HD,
That'd just hold the pickup and the
460
trailer.
foot-pounds.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to touch a little bit, for this turbocharged guy, and not just him, a lot of other people. He's probably going to be over that foot-pound rating, but you can kind of ease it into, well, Wyatt, what are you at? How much power?
1236. Well, 1236, but I just put a different turbo on it, so I don't know.
So, what we've found with the NV4500 is they really don't like fast lockup clutches, your dual discs and stuff like that. The factory clutch seemed to be the best, maybe a mild towing clutch seemed to do the less damage. That's what we found years ago when we were, when it was all still OE parts and stuff like that. When we were rebuilding them, that's what we found is the heavy lockup clutches was just a little bit too much and kind of shock load them. Of course, if people are, very
smooth,
if they're very foot sensitive, they're not just putting it down, slamming it in the next gear and just, kind of sliding their foot off the side. That's when you get a lot of problems.
Yeah.
That's a great point that kind of leads into not even just like single disc versus dual disc, but then what your friction material is on your clutch. If you're running a ceramic, it's a very harsh engagement. So even
Did we lose you?
Still there?
I lost Wyatt for a minute.
Technical difficulties.
What he was getting at, this transmission is capable of holding quite a bit of power, but the speed and onset of that power and like the rate of delivery changes kind of where the failure can be, right? I mean, if you had I would say even a dual disc organic faced clutch is safe to use for a high level of power as long as you're not, clutch dump in fourth gear, boosted launch kind of a thing, right? But a ceramic, with a pumped up 12 valve and a dual disc ceramic, that is like an on off switch, right? It's fairly, I don't care what the rest of the internet is going to say. It's not a pleasant or smooth thing all the time, right? And so going from, your input shaft not spinning to, wow, we're spinning real fast and there's a lot of force behind it, something's going to give, and it's probably going to be in the transmission versus that dual disc, ceramic clutch, or, that's a very, very, very important part to consider. And on this guy's turbo, I didn't get any specs for his truck, how it's set up. It's lifted, 4-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive thing. If you're running a high, I don't know, a boosted gas vehicle that you're looking to run super high horsepower, right? Especially with a lot of boost on a gas engine, that's going to come on really hard, right? And with the wrong clutch setup and loading it too fast, I'm not going to say it's the best choice, but a good organic faced clutch and driving fairly responsible. You don't have to baby it, but just driving responsible and normal will help this transmission live far beyond, I think, what is like Wyatt over there. We'll beat on that. We'll beat on Wyatt's truck. Wyatt's truck's really nice, but we've gone out onto what's that road right outside your house? It's got a slight uphill grade. I've been in the truck where he's been power shifting under full boost plenty of times. And with the right clutch and knowing how to drive the thing still drives great, man.
And part of that too, I think it's kind of back to the gear oil talk too, because it's like your oil's in there to provide, you want an oil that's shear stable. So in an ideal world, you're always going to have your gear mesh riding on a super thin film of oil. So if you have crappy oil, it's not going to provide that protection. So you're just going to wear the gear itself down. But then also, if you're dropping the clutch and shock loading it a lot more, the higher or the more stable oils are going to protect those gears from those shock loads more than,
I had an old guy talking to me about the same kind of thing. He says, if you drive it like a human being, like you're trying to not upset your mom while she's in the passenger seat, that's a good idea. He said, think about it this way. You can take an 80-pound kid and you can take an empty pop can and they can stand on that pop can and it won't give. But the second that you flick the side, tap it, or they hop, that little bit of a shock load is all it takes to really do that. And guys that have been out four-wheeling, you get one of those pull ropes, right, where you got maybe chain right at the truck and then some give in between. You can pull and it'll maybe snap you up out just with the tow rig first moving, but you get springing on it and you can really start to break stuff. That's the same thing if you're fast on the clutch, if you're too fast shifting gears and not being careful about letting that clutch out smooth. That's what's going to take out anything. That 445 FE sounds like it'd be a whole lot of fun to drive. I'd like to go for a drive in it, and I wouldn't hesitate to use a 4500 for it, but that's because I would drive it, most of the time careful. Like you said with Wyatt, go out and beat on it a little bit, but don't beat on it with a big ugly hammer. Just go out and have a little fun and then drive like normal most of the time.
My guess is this is probably in a weekend play around vehicle. It's probably not being worked. So even, it's going to be a lighter engine than a Cummins anyway. So I would assume these are all guesses. It's probably in a half-ton or three-quarter-ton 80s, 70s, 60s truck or something like that. And so he's probably going to break the tires loose before anything were to occur. But also a turbocharged gas engine like that, you're probably not loading it down super heavy before you're going to end up with, overheating issues. So if it's unloaded and it's just a play around vehicle, I'd say you're probably fine. It's like talking about like my truck. Yes, we play around with it, but anytime I'm towing with it, I'm not, power shifting, driving like a moron. I've got an old center force organic clutch in it that doesn't slip or anything. It's a little underrated for the torque it's putting out, but it's been fine. But being able to smoothly engage towing heavy definitely is. It just comes down to the person. Like, if you're a kid who's loading it up and just dumping the clutch, you're probably going to break it. But then again, you could probably break a 6-speed just as well, or whatever you're working with.
Give me a minute. I can break it.
Yep.
I believe in you, Chris.
My cousin, I got a younger cousin. I'm the oldest in my whole generation, both sides of my family, and everybody's younger than me. So I got to be the one that break the stuff and figure out how to not get in as much trouble. And that was me. My younger cousin, he saw, I said, my little brother got a new truck for Christmas or his birthday or whatever. And my cousin saw that and he said, man, I could break that in 5 minutes. And I just did not understand. I was breaking things not meaning to, trying to keep everything going. And here he was. I bet I could destroy that right now. So
I still
everybody's
have
got a
that
little
video.
different mindset, the way they look at things. His mindset changed quite a bit. So did mine. Now I kind of like to go out and break something once in a while. But
I still have that video of you driving that fresh 6-speed before the synchros were even like that.
I don't know why everybody thought I was being so hard.
I'm like, hey,
I was just driving.
Yeah, we had to let those brass synchros seat a little bit, and here's Chris.
Yeah.
Womp, womp.
I was just helping seed them.
We're fast forwarding the break-in period. Yeah. I like it.
I think we pretty much touched on most things except for the one question. How do you replace the race on the bearing retainer? What tools do you use? What do you guys do? Or that's right, you said did I hold this up already?
Not since we've been live, no.
Okay, that's right. We did it pre-show. So use one of these little tools here, and you can put it on a slide hammer, or if you want to put some kind of a steel puck or something in there for a press rod. You can take this tool right here, and it hooks in right behind the bearing cup, just like that.
Now that's the best way to do it. But if you don't have that, the other way you can do that, and you got to be careful, you don't want weld spatter everywhere. But if you put a weld bead around there, that can shrink it. If you're not thinking that that's going to be quite enough, you can take, if you're rebuilding the whole transmission and you're replacing the thrust washers, you can take one of those thrust washers that fits right inside there pretty good. You can weld that thrust washer in there, put a rod through the backside, and you can smack that out, pop that right loose right there.
Yeah.
Just like so.
Thanks for the assist.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's also Miller Tools 6453 for the Dodge manual for these, but for the cost of those Miller Tools, a brand new input shaft is fairly inexpensive for these as well, and those always come with the new bearing retainers. So
yeah, well the kit, the input
kit,
shaft kit comes with a retainer. Right. And we normally throw the 1 3/8 new input on these things anyway, because I don't think we've had a customer that came to us that wasn't also like, no, I don't want to replace my clutch at all, just rebuild. We're normally seeing guys that want to replace the clutch while they're in there, and we always say, well, here's our recommendation. Let's go with an 1 3/8. It does come with those new retainers, but like you said, I've welded. Like you can get a big washer, or even just a piece of. I've used a piece of just like 1 inch wide bar stock or whatever, and welded the sides. You can set it upside down and put some sort of threaded rod down through the inside and just smack it, and it'll come out. You can also just throw a whole bead around that race, and once it cools, it'll contract, and you can sometimes pull them out by hand. So there's that. Why when you gave that Miller tool number, maybe it was just my internet connection here, but when you gave that Miller tool number, you kind of broke up. Were you guys able to hear that? Can you say it again?
I missed it.
Yeah, it's Miller Tool 6453.
Yeah.
And that is the jaw and insert to the larger Miller tool, which I think is like 6444, and that's the puller setup. So to use the Miller tool per the book, you need quite a few other odds and ends pieces to get that to work.
They're not cheap at all.
No,
Yeah.
That's why I grabbed this, because it still works and it's a lot less pieces to bring into our studio here.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure.
Either the Miller tool would probably work better, just because Miller tools are awesome.
Miller tools are awesome.
That's kind of why we got this, and as long as it's got the skinny legs on it or feet on it, it'll get back in there and pull whatever you need to pull off with that.
So we missed one question. It is, why do the early style top covers fail, and what do you do if it happens?
That's a good one.
Yeah, so the early style top covers with the round where the lever comes out is round. Parts just kind of wear on the top cover itself, and when that fails, the top cover is bad. Where the newer square top ones, if your the little tower gets bad, the little shift tower, yeah, there's square cover right there. If that little tower that bolts on that gets bad, you just change that out. And those are also, what's that plastic? Delrin plastic, I believe. They might be some other weird kind of plastic, but Delrin's the most common in automotive applications. It's plastic parts wearing. It's kind of self-lubricating. They always get oil. Both kinds get oil up to them. But with the round top cover, you get a little bit of grit in there, and it just slowly shaves away. Whereas with the plastic and metal components on the newer ones, the metal, the little metal shavings or whatever gets in there, little grit, just kind of embeds into the plastic and smooths out more or less. It's a little more technical than that, I guess, but they're
Well,
a little more friendly for abrasive material. Is usually why you get more hard failures with the round top cover. Plus, they're how old are they now? Older than dirt.
The last
now.
one was 97.
Yeah, so they're getting up there.
I had one of
They've
the
been
last
around
ones.
a lot longer.
Yeah. The failures we go ahead, Wyatt.
Go ahead, Andrew.
So what we've seen, those little inserts for the round top, the little inserts that go into the top, and you lock it down with the little metal retainer and the spring. There's a lot of force, and you're moving around a lot. With every time you're moving it, you're wearing that little support for that collar, and so basically your shifter, like over time, obviously your shifter is dropping down farther like this. So we had one in recently where it was worn down so far that when you would move the shifter to each side, like to go into first or second, or it was like sticking. It was hanging on the shift rails. Those it was gouging really hard.
Wow.
Yeah, like it's basically you're dropping it down, and you can cause all kinds of like weird shift issues if it's hanging up on any of those metal pieces. So I mean.
Well, then everything that's in there is pushing against something that it's not supposed to be either.
Yeah.
And it just compounds. It's another one of those tolerance lasagna deals. You keep on wearing across those shift lugs on your shift shafts, and you're just dumping more material into the transmission.
Yeah.
Well, that's the round top. Either way, it's a ball and socket design. The round top, though, there's no plastic. It's just metal on metal, and you've got your shifter that's steel up against aluminum right there, and your wear item is the cover itself. Whereas, like what Jesse's saying, that metal ball within the plastic that it's actually moving around in kind of lubricates it, and then if it does fail, it's you're just replacing that the actual very top piece of your shifter instead of the whole top of the transmission. But
well, the good news for everybody is there's more than one shift top.
Yes,
there's not just the round top and the square top. Even in the square top, there's some that are a little bit taller for is it the P truck? I think
P trucks were taller. I think, yeah.
And as long as you've got the matching parts for a shift top, any of the shift tops work on any of the 4500s. Doesn't matter if it's a Dodge or a Chevy.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to chime in here. I held it up. These little isolator things, super cheap, super easy to keep your top from sealing. Like if you have a square top or from leaking, excuse me. A lot of people think like, oh, it's at the top, it's not going to leak. I mean, there's no oil being held in by it. Well, these transmissions like fling oil everywhere, and you have to seal the metal base to the top, right? And then, if you don't do that, you'll actually leak quite a bit through the top, and then we get back to the whole leak discussion. But then these things are just so damn cheap. Believe it or not, this affects how much like slop you feel in the shifter quite a bit. Every time we get a transmission that uses one of these, we send these out with them. I mean, I think you get these for anywhere for under $10. So if you're chasing a good feeling shifter, replace that, but make sure you seal it so you're not dumping good red line oil all over the ground.
Exactly. Probably the best example I could point somebody to for looking at how much a gear oil throws around with gears spinning at speed. Gale Banks did a series of videos where he made a new rear end cooling cover. And when he was doing that, he was doing a lot of research on it. He built several clear covers, put it on the back of an 11.5 Dodge rear end, ran it up to 80 miles an hour. And it's barely moving before that oil is absolutely everywhere. You can't see air in the case anywhere. And it'd be exactly the same in the transmission.
At
I
idle,
think,
it would be able to throw oil and leak if you had a leaky shift tower.
yeah, I think when on his video, his first stage where he stopped to talk about it, I'm pretty sure he was only doing like 10 or 15 miles
Yeah,
an
he
hour.
wasn't doing much
yeah.
for the first one. Yeah,
And
the
the
first
oil
part
was
of it.
everywhere.
Yeah, it was 20 or 25 maybe. It wasn't any faster than that though.
Yeah, and oil's already going all over the place, and so I mean, essentially, it's safe to say that every inch of that transmission is coated with oil being thrown against it as soon as you're moving. So don't think that just because it's the top that it's not going to be able to leak. It'll leak, and it'll leak quite a bit. Another thing though is if you have the square tops, they have that rubber sealing cover, that goes over the top of it, and it'll kind of clip in around the metal pieces that support the shifter.
Yeah.
You have to replace those. Like a lot of them get really brittle. Most of them are at least ripped or torn a little bit. And if you don't think that you can get any dirt in there, well, I mean, look at the bottom of your truck. You're getting crap all over it. If you got holes in there, it won't be very in that sealing cover. It doesn't happen very fast, but over 40, 50,000 miles, you're throwing a lot of dirt in there. So make sure it's like another $10 or something for that. Just replace it. Same with the round top. They're a little bit harder to find, but replace that round top sealing little cover thing, and you'll keep a lot of trash out of your transmission.
We've got the boot for that round top one.
Yeah. I'm just saying you can go anywhere locally and pick one up.
Oh no, yeah, they are kind of a specialized item now.
If you go into TransStar or whatever and ask them, they'll look at you like you got your eyes crossed or something. Yeah.
I guess maybe we should talk just, if someone's thinking about doing their own rebuild or what have you, do we want to discuss anaerobic versus RTV for the extension housing, and then maybe, I guess a quick point, retaining ring pliers, the lock ring pliers, you're going to need a good set. The cheap parts store ones aren't going to cut it for you.
Yeah,
They do not.
And then overfilling by a quart. We always overfill by 1 quart. If you run the PTO coolers, each of those add an additional quart. So, I mean, which is a good thing. I mean, more oil it's going to be more of a heat sink. It's probably not going to do a ton just in the more oil aspect, but having those aluminum PTO coolers is going to help the cooling side of it. But then, more oil is less likely to be contaminated as fast, break down quite as fast. So that definitely helps. And then helping the rear bearing on the main shaft by filling 1 quart over definitely is something we always do.
Hey, Jesse, is it okay if we talk about a tool? If we make a recommendation for snap ring pliers for a brand that you can get up in, what are those really cheap ones you got that are actually really awesome?
They work great. Let me pull up Amazon. I think it was Wild Tool, WILDE, and you can buy. They've got the straight nose, and then I think it's like a 90-degree tip, but they're actually made in the USA. Lock ring pliers that I bought them. I think they were $25 a piece or something, just to give them a shot before biting the bullet and spending Snap-on money. But I've used the crap out of them, and they're holding up fantastic. So for someone just
really
looking to build yourself, I would highly recommend those. They're about the cheapest ones I would ever go to, and they're really good value for the money.
Yeah, my big Snap-on ones were quite a bit more. And frankly, they might be a little bit overkill for some guy who's just doing this at home in their garage. The TorqueKing Premium kit, and then these snap ring pliers. Those will help you get that crazy. This guy, sorry, that'll actually pull this off without. If you don't quite have this spread out far enough and it starts to twist or anything like this, the inside edges, as you pull it off, can scratch that surface, and we want to avoid that, right? So the tool that
100%.
Wyatt's
That's a
showing-
bearing surface.
Yeah, that's a bearing surface right there. So yeah, that
Yeah.
getting the right pliers so you don't scratch that surface is very key.
And the ones that Wyatt's about to share or whatever, if you found his part number,
Yeah.
those things are legit, man. Those are actually really nice for $25. And like he said, made in the USA, and they feel a lot more expensive than they are. So that's one thing that we would recommend for a guy that's doing it at home. But then if you get one of the Torque King Premium kits that also even has the inner synchros, the inner synchro rings for 1 and 2. Those kits come with a small parts kit on steroids. I swear. Like even those big giant washers, if you somehow break one, taken off. I have done that, but their kit comes with even those big thick washers. So shy of busting gears, that kit will have pretty much everything, and we love it. And I haven't had any of these little things break when I'm installing them. So between that premium kit and the tool, you're on a good track for a home build. And then throwing some of these on there, you're set for longevity.
Don't
Yeah,
forget to get the book, for just a home build, never done it before.
Yes.
Absolutely invaluable.
That saves, this answers all the questions. It saves a lot of, we'll call it tech support phone time. We can walk people through whatever they need, but
And there's
having it right there in
troubleshooting
front
in
of
the
you.
back of the book too.
Yeah, having it right there in front of you. A lot of guys are probably doing it in the middle of the night on a weekend or something, so they have it for the next week. Having all the information, having a good kit that's going to have everything you need, and then of course the right tools. A fifth gear wrench. Don't be the guy with a hammer and a punch trying to tighten that fifth gear nut.
It's terrible on them.
Good snap ring pliers, and the spline holding wrench. That's kind of an optional. You could lock the gears, 2 gears together, but that's really all that's the basics. It doesn't take too many crazy things, maybe something like this, but even this isn't that far out of realm for most guys. Well, half the guys that, work on their own stuff.
And there's if you need something a little bit more like interactive, there's actually a video on YouTube made by a guy named Chris, and he does a full NV4500 breakdown. He goes a little bit overboard with all the modeling poses, but there's plenty of good info in there.
I cannot help what the video editor did with what I gave him.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted a little extra. I gave him a little extra.
Yeah.
We
all
wanted to point out a
appreciate
couple
it,
of things. Well, good. I appreciate that. The book, I bought this, and when I first went through this, I bought this actually the day before I started working here. That's why I ended up working here. I was impressed with the book. They needed somebody to help out, and here I am helping out. I bought the book, and I probably read through it 3 times, and I didn't understand everything yet. I've been working on cars for 30 years. I understand just about everything there is, but I wasn't into manual transmissions yet. I hadn't actually done much in them. I'd changed a couple of pieces out because I can take anything apart and put it back together, but it was not the same as knowing what was going on. So when I went into this, I had watched every video I could find on YouTube, which is what I wanted to put some more of them out too. I went through the book, like I say, 2 or 3 times I read it. And each time I read it, I understood a little bit more. And then as I read it going through the transmission itself, everything started to fall together. And now, a year later, I've read through it probably another 6 or 7 times. And I still went through it here a week ago when I did another transmission build because it's good to follow it in order. And the one time I didn't, I had to go backwards and put something else back on again. So I strongly recommend the book, not just because we're selling it. We're glad to sell it. We'll take your money all day long.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to. But it's going to do you a whole lot better to have the right stuff to start out in the beginning, and that book will get you through there a whole lot better.
Yeah.
So I found that the tool. So it's Wild Tool, WILDE G409.NP, and those are the angle tip lock ring pliers, which For the 4500, I'd say you can probably get away with just those. I also have the G407.NP, which are the straight tip lock ring pliers. I can't think of anything on the 4500 where I've had to use those. They tend to work pretty nice on the NP like 241 transfer cases on a couple of the rings in there. But yeah, those Wild tools, they're made in the US. One's $24 and the other one's $22. So
And they're on Amazon too. So
yeah, they're sold through Amazon. So
super easy. You don't got to go to get suckered into the tool truck guy.
I was going to say on the locking pliers, lock ring pliers, I haven't priced the snap-on ones, but I know I've priced plenty of cheap ones. I've looked on Amazon, I've looked everywhere else, but I've had a set of Mac. I have some that are skinny at the tip and one that kind of goes around a little bit of an L shape at the tip. And I've used both of them over and over interchangeably building transmissions. I got them for doing automatics, but anything with a lock ring. Transfer cases have got them too. So it's awful helpful to put the right tool in there. And the teeth on my Mac pliers still in great shape. And those pliers, brand new, are only about $40 to $48 a pair, which is, a bunch if you're adding up the $100 bills. But if you're going to do this more than once, they're not a bad price either. And you can find them on eBay, the very same Mac models for around $20 to $25.
There you go. Yeah, the Snap-on ones are something. I think they were knocking on the $100 door, but I will say
I did break down and get a few of the Snap-on ones.
Glad.
We have an old set. It's at our machine shop up in Roberts where we used to do all the rebuilds. I forget the brand. It's still in great shape, and it's not coming down here to get beat up. And we did have some various cheaper ones and even some better ones from some better brands. And I'll have to try the ones that you suggested. But the Snap-on ones, I mean, if you got a Snap-on truck coming anyway, and you don't mind paying whatever a week for 100 weeks, or the Snap-on ones do also work. But if there is a comparable product that's a better price, by all means, unless you're doing it professionally and you need the warranty or something.
Yeah. You guys have a premium kit model where you can add the manual, and then don't you have an option? I'm sorry, it's been a while, but you have an option where you can add like the 5th gear nut tool and stuff, and the holder and the spline socket holder, right? Is that?
Yeah. The QK1003 is the Dodge 94 to 2007, or what is it? 2005?
Isn't it a TK or is it a QK?
QK 1003, and that's got the tools in it as well. It's got the press tools to put the races in. Mm-hmm. It's got the press tools to put the bearings onto the shafts, and it's got a 3/16 punch in it for doing the roll pins.
So for
Joel's got it pulled up here for me.
Yeah, we'll get it pulled. We'll put it as our background for.
Yeah.
So for a
one
guy
tool in there that's really handy, and I didn't know how to use it the first time I tried, is just one little aluminum puck for putting the synchros in the 1-2 synchro hub.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm going to do a quick little video on that. It's a absolutely invaluable tool for doing that.
So for a guy that is watching this and is like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to rebuild my NV4500. The premium kit, the one that you're showing here, a good set of the parts store snap ring pliers will not work. They are inadequate. So once you get a new set of snap ring pliers, you'll need a big, gigantic torque wrench. And that should cover a guy wanting to build one of these at home, unless.
That pretty much covers it. That QK1003, there's options for the manual. There's options for an exploded view manual, or even we've got the DVD. All these pictures in this book were taken off of video, and we've got the video still. It's dated. We made it
a few days
ago. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Times 100.
Yeah, cameras at the time had cassettes. So, I mean, it's dated, but it's still, it's got all the pictures that are in here are in that.
Yeah.
You get any of those, like Chris said, it comes with a bunch of tools. Doesn't come with the snap ring pliers, so you need to get that. And then if for your bearing retainer, if you didn't want to weld it, you'd need to get something like this. But these cheap ones probably aren't that expensive, and most of them, mostly even the cheap ones, will at least work for a while.
Yeah. And then,
Several times.
So
Other than that, the kit's pretty complete.
Yeah, and then for anybody that's watching that is at that point where they want to do that, our recommendations would be getting a. I'm trying to not shake the table too much. This is a full spline main shaft. These splines support 5th gear. Your factory one, you'll see they're cut off right about here. So we recommend a full spline main shaft on all of them. The TorqueKing kit comes with a 5th gear kit. The full spline main shafts come with these half moon window things. But then other than that, a cast iron housing from TorqueKing, these big, heavy, burly suckers. And then if you have either a clutch that will accept it, or if you're willing to change your clutch, we like to put an 1 3/8 input. So I think the main shafts are like $200 or something like that. Or $150 something. The cast iron tail housings are under 200. The input kits under 200. It does add up, but those things are, I think, huge benefits for the longevity.
I think they pay dividends in the long run for sure.
Yeah.
And our 1 3/8 kits now are cryo-treated kit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There you go. That's a big. I mean, why don't you talk about some of the cryo treatment, the actual data that's out there? I mean, since you're a
So there's a variety of different data. It seems like the general consensus is about a 30% increase in part strength, being that everything within these gear wise are all cast. There's always going to be some level of casting imperfection, so that can help take out the casting imperfections when you're going from martensite to austenite, as far as the actual grain structure of your steel. You're going to have, as it cools on a cast part, things are going to basically not have a super uniform structure. They try and do it, and everything's obviously it goes through a heat treatment process, but the cryo treatment on top of that brings it down to somewhere in like the negative 350 Fahrenheit range, negative 300 and negative
North Dakota.
Yeah. So just set it outside.
Probably okay, as long as you left your truck outside at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a variety of people nationwide that you can send parts to be cryo treated to. It varies. It seems like the general cost is about $4 ish a pound. So if you're sending your whole gear set, it can get kind of spendy, but it can help stop gear failures. Generally, the gear failures you're going to have is a surface crack that can start, and then that just propagates, and then you break a tooth off, and it just runs through it, and that's the end of it. I don't know that we've really seen any in the 5 speeds or the 6 speeds where a gear has been entirely intact but broken from the center outwards with anything. It's generally always a tooth failure. So yeah, doing the cryo treatments, we do have a vendor we work with. So if someone wants one built, we can have them cryo treated, and you can look at our website and get all the info for that sort of stuff.
And our vendor will not just cryo treatment, but we incorporate micro polishing as well, so they look super duper pretty. You don't want to put the top cover on anything. Yeah, so the micro polishings, any sort of the surface treatments, there's micro polishing, there is ceramic, like micro shot peening, essentially. The shot peening doesn't change the dimensional characteristics of said gear, but
shot peening anything increases surface hardness. And if you're cyclically loading a shaft where it's under a torque, imagine a shaft that's fixed at one end and you've got a weight on the other and it's spinning, it's going to fail significantly sooner being cyclically loaded without some sort of surface treatment, because it will have natural imperfections in the surface, even if it is a machine surface, and eventually a crack will propagate and fail. So that same thought process transfers over to the gear teeth themselves. And so cryo-treating and then doing the polishing or the shot peening, or everyone's kind of got their own proprietary
I
blend.
saw you guys had up on your Instagram a while back some gears that were welded up. Was that hard surfacing?
The welded gears are for the engagement plates on the 6-speeds. You got one by it?
Yeah. So this, I don't know how well this is coming up, but you can see this plate is actually a separate piece from this gear. And so this center hub is part of the small gear, and then this plate, it just got this dinky little pin weld on there. Now it does take a bit to shear that, but yeah, we have a guy that's local to us. He's a TIG ninja. I'm not nearly as good as he is, so we take him to him, and he actually will do a really, really beautiful weld around here to get the engagement plate really, really firmly welded to this center hub here, and it helps kind of stiffen things up. But that's kind of a 6-speed thing, and we only do them for we do every of our that we build in house. We'll weld this one. We'll weld an input shaft. I got a bunch that are pre-welded, but as far as doing like third and fourth, we'll do those on customer request for a small extra fee. 1 and 2, it's not really necessary because they're absolutely massive. And reverse, obviously, same thing. It's nearly the size of first gear. They're huge. That doesn't translate too well over to a 4500. So the point where you need cryo treatment is pretty high on a 6-speed. On a 4500, the parts are a lot smaller, and they're doing the same kind of work with, the input shaft on a 4500 is way smaller than a 5600, and yet we're still throwing the same power and pulling the same stuff through them, right? Getting 30% extra strength out of a 4500 would be quite beneficial. That little 6 gear I was holding up, I think that's actually pretty close to the same size as an input on a 4500, and that's where all the failures are in 6-speed. So if that says anything, right? I mean, yeah, cryo treatment's good. We have a good vendor that we really like, and everything gets really pretty.
We're at almost 2 hours.
Holy cow. Well, I guess we went over our time.
Well, that's good info, though.
Yeah. I think we covered everything we needed to cover. You guys still want to do the next show? The other one that we'll talk to you about?
Yeah, we'll need to.
Okay, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. And thanks for watching. If you have any questions, go ahead and just leave a comment on the video. Give us a call. Give Long Range Gear a call if you got if you need a transmission ready to go. They can set you up.
You mind if we do a quick little thing about our website and everything?
Yeah, we'll put it on. We'll put it at the end. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And check our Instagram, Long Range Gear.
Yep. You guys got anything else for this one?
I guess one thing we'll add,